Get this live started.
Hey, good
Hello.
morning.
Good morning. Good.
Actually, well, good afternoon to you. Right.
That's right. You're Pacific time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Good day. Good day.
Right, exactly. You know what?
Um,
I like that. Good day indeed. Every day is a good day, regardless of what news is coming our way. There's something good in the day.
there is gratitude, which I know you and I have talked about before. Is a healthy practice.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. Yeah. So let me introduce us. I am Dr. Alisa Hurwitz. I'm a clinical psychologist. I also go by, in the theater world, the theater community, the name of the moniker of Dr. Drama. I talk about the intersection of psychology and theater, lecture about it, interview about it, talk about it, nonstop if people let me. And my guest today is Darnell Abraham, who is currently in intermission from playing George Washington in Hamilton, the Anne Peggy tour, and has also been in The Color Purple as Harpo, right?
No, actually, I played the role of Adam, and I covered Mister.
Oh, I'm sorry. And you covered Mr. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. I got that wrong.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
I would love to see you play any of those roles. And I first saw you in one of my favorite shows of all time, in a fantastic production at the Ogunquit Playhouse, the famed Ogunquit Playhouse, playing Colehouse Walker Jr. in Ragtime. A show that I wish, you wish, I know, would just be playing forever
Right.
in New York as a history lesson and a contemporary lesson to us all at
Yeah.
that musical. So welcome, Darnell. I'm so happy to have you on.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. I'm just really looking forward to just chatting it up with you today about I think what is a really important issue, mental health, and especially for a time like right now where this is such an unusual time, in our world history, and everyone is affected by this thing, in many different ways, and so I'm just looking forward to getting inside of that, and also looking at it from a from an arts perspective.
Yeah.
That's not something we get to do often, and that's one of the things I love about the work that you do is you really turn things on its side or on its head, and really explore these different topics from an artistic point of view, which is pretty brilliant if you ask me.
Yeah, thank you. There's definitely a lot of rich soil there to mine, from the content. I mean, really, in a way, I think every musical has meant, psychological components. It's,
Yeah.
the exploration of the inner lives and the relation of characters and the relationships.
Hmm.
It's expressed through song, dance, and dialogue,
Yeah.
in music. And is that not what psychology is? It's just, expressed in a different way, most of the
Yeah.
time through words or through art, drawing. But I mean, it's such a crossover.
Yeah.
So I'd love to start by asking, how are you doing?
Well,
Uh-huh.
oh, actually, I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. All things considered, I'm doing well. I'm taking it one day at a time. To be completely honest with you, it's like it's uncharted territory. You know what I mean? And so it's a little scary. I'm gonna be honest. You know what I mean? It's interesting because as artists, we're used to fluidity. I feel like our career is
Mhm.
is very unique in that way, but this is a different kind of fluidity. I don't think any of us have ever, have ever traversed before. So, but with that being said, I'm doing well. After shows were canceled in San Francisco, we decided to relocate closer to family. So right now, currently in Southern California, and which is a second home for us. Wanda and I lived here in the LA area before we moved to New York, and so it's just a peace of mind, of being close to family, being in an area that's familiar, until we're back on the road, and yeah. So I'm doing pretty good though.
Yeah, that's good. It is a scary time. It's a, it feels like an emotional roller coaster. Like some days are right, some days are good, some days are not so good. Yesterday, I was just like super irritable about nothing, like
Hmm.
anything. I was just gonna be irritated about. It had nothing to do with what was really happening. And then today I
Right.
feel good, and a theme of these conversations has been honoring the feelings.
Mhm.
This is, the situation that we're all in is scary and threatening and upsetting and angering and all of those things. And within that, there can be bad days, and
Mhm.
within that, there can also be good days, and it's all okay.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I don't know what your screen name is there, Stelt Rinny. Okay, people are saying, is there no sound there? But yeah, I can hear, and other people are saying sound, so I think you got to restart.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay. So thank you for prompting me that please. Oh, hi Antoinette. Please put in your comments and questions below, and we will get to them as many as possible. Antoinette is a colleague of mine and a good friend, and I was with her. We went to go see Ragtime together.
Oh,
So she saw your work in that and was likewise very impressed.
thanks. Thank you.
So yes, I know she wanted to make it
You know
here.
what's crazy is the fact that that was, gosh, was that 3 years ago now? But no, it was almost 4 years ago
Like,
now.
yeah.
For 3 or 4 years. I mean, it just feels like we just did it yesterday.
Oh, I bet.
Uh, it is just bizarre.
Oh, I bet. I still remember they had the I loved the opening set piece was a side view, kind of like at an angle of the Statue of Liberty,
Yeah, yeah,
which I mean, I have chills thinking about it. I love what they did, of course, with the original Broadway
mhm,
production. But there was something about that set piece that I thought really hit it home. Lady Liberty and what she symbolized and the place that she has in the in that world, which is
yeah,
a lot of that takes place on Ellis Island. A lot of
yeah.
the happenings of that show, and I feel like that brings us to the modern day of like questioning. Do we still stand by those values that she
Hmm.
is not to? Yeah,
Right.
great
Let's
set
talk
piece.
about
Yeah.
that. Let's talk about that. You know what I mean? Um, and I think that's one of the things that makes Ragtime, such a moving piece and such a relevant piece because it discusses things and we explore what was happening, at the turn of the century. And then we fast forward because at that time, that was the rallies in North Carolina, had
Charlottesville.
happened in Charlottesville, I mean? And so, gosh, talk about an energy, that was raw and that was appropriate. I mean, I think in light of what was happening in our country at that time and still is happening, unfortunately, is still happening today. And I think that's one of the really cool things about being an artist and is an opportunity to invest uh, in works that that speak about what's happening in the world today, and hopefully that they're making a difference.
Hmm.
But that was our director. His decision to use Lady Liberty and have her front and center stage like that was moving. And even just for me to walk out, and to see it before the house opened and just to see that piece there, it really kind of puts things in perspective. And God, I really hope they bring that show back. I hope they do. And I know a guy who plays Cole House, so maybe, he'll get a chance to, not throw away his shot. Just saying. You see what I did there?
There.
You see what I did there?
The great thing
Yeah.
about Hamilton is that it being the show with the most number of lyrics is that if you listen to it enough times, you can make a Hamilton reference,
Yeah.
left and right.
Yeah.
There's ample opportunity.
You really can.
Yeah.
You really can.
There's so many words to use. Welcome everybody who's coming in and joining us. We're talking about mental wellness during the pandemic, but also about psychology and theater and that intersection. Please please join the conversation, put comments in, questions, and we will get to as many as we can. And you were talking about, you know, trying to stay okay during this crazy time. And being in Southern California, have you been able to take advantage of being outside a lot? Because that's something that has been hard here. I practice and work in New Hampshire, and we've had a few nice days, but it's still been kind of cold and rainy.
Yeah.
People are struggling with not being able to be outside.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to be able to get outside. We wear masks everywhere we go, and Juan and I we make a point. So we have a routine, and so every other day we're either walking or jogging. So last night, we said, all right, we're gonna jog for 2 miles. Sometimes it's 3 miles. But it's just to get out, get the juices flowing. I'm trying not to gain weight right now. That's probably my biggest struggle right now.
Yeah.
And Wanda is a really good cook, by the way. Really, really good cook. And so it's a double-edged sword because I love to eat, but I'm not performing. I'm not as active. So anyways, but yeah, so we are able to get outside, and the weather has been pleasant since we've been here. So
Great.
it's important, just kind of soaking up that vitamin D and get those juices flowing, get the endorphins, floating, and that all just kind of helps keep things in relative balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm eager for that to happen up here in the Northeast, so people can be getting more of that. I've been recommending light therapy boxes for folks, to help through until then. But there's nothing like just being able to sit in the grass and soak up the sun.
Yeah. Well, your photo from over the weekend, where you guys were, just out hanging.
Yeah.
I mean, that was bliss.
It was. Yeah. I had a book and an apple and the yard and the kids. And it really was. It really was. Yeah. So we soaked that up, and we're lucky, while the weather hasn't, there's been mostly not great weather days, but a few good ones. We've been able to take advantage of it. And that's something I know, like a lot of the folks in New York in the city have really struggled with, because not only the living space is smaller, but also to even go outside. Like, we can step outside here and not take a risk. We're not running into anybody, this space is ours. So to pass to the outside, we don't have to pass through anybody else's space.
Yeah.
But if you live in New York, you have to go in the elevator, walk down the stairs, and people have been in that space, and that's already taking a risk, and never mind, to go outside safely and be outside safely.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, my thoughts, my heart really goes out to our New York family. Actually, there's a handful of them on here right now. I saw some familiar names.
Yes.
From New York. Actually, one of the people on here is from Australia. Yeah, so this is pretty exciting. Hey, everybody.
they tuned in to see their friend, right? That's awesome. Yeah, somebody's screen name had a Australian ring to it when I said it out loud.
Yeah, she said she was getting up at 3:30 in the morning to catch this segment. So
gosh,
yeah.
Welcome.
Right.
She definitely gets the farthest travel award.
Right.
Thank you for joining. So Dr. Antoinette Harrington did have a question. How do you stay grounded when portraying such profound characters?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, there really is no one easy formula or answer to it, but it's really, I think, a number of things that I employ to help me stay grounded. Number one, for me, this is my own personal approach to the art. Is it's not about me. It really is about me, and so that number one, right off the bat, that really kind of helps walk into this space, into these roles, and not feel like it's about me. And I do bring myself to the role. I bring my unique experiences to the role, but I really try to take it off of me. And then, so that's one of the ways that helps me stay grounded. And that's also something that my family, my wife as well, that's something that we just value. It's about, it's this idea of service of giving. And when you do that, you can't serve and be selfish at the same time. You know, so that's something that really has been a tremendous help to me. It's also leaving it on stage. You know, one of the things I absolutely love about interacting with my nieces and nephews is, you know, for them, I'm just Uncle Darnell. That's it. You
Yep.
know, they don't care about what roles I've done or what projects, you know, I've been a part of. At the end of the day, for them, I'm just Uncle Darnell. You know, with Wanda, you know, I'm just her husband. You know what I mean? And they support what I do, but that really does help me stay grounded as well. It gives me a sense of reality. So that way, there is a separation between the work and the the personal life, if you will. And that just, yeah, I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's how I navigate. I think I think what is sometimes difficult, you know, journey of staying grounded, you know, when you are, you know, doing these very profound and difficult roles. And not only that, but also, you know, with a role like Cole House, you know, or a role like Mr. Or even Washington, you know, I mean, these are roles that carry a lot of weight. And there's I'm nothing like Mr., you know, in terms of who I am everyday life. I'm not this mean, abusive person. I mean, that's so contrary to my everyday life and just who I am. You know, but I had to find a way to get inside of that. So I had to figure out what it is that I needed to do. But in addition to that, I think that was easier to step away from. You know, it's a lot easier to leave it on stage. But what was a little more difficult for me was playing the role of Cole House, just because Cole House, there's so many similarities there in terms of Cole House is this man who is, you know, his desire is to be accepted. His desire is to be recognized as an upstanding citizen. You know, he's a man who made his mistakes, and he's trying to right wrongs. You know, only to have all of that taken away from him, and only for this justice system for all to fail him. You know, and I've never been, you know, in a courtroom. You know, I've never have you know, experienced that level and measure of trauma, but you know, I do know what it's like, you know, to be in my skin and to not to be accepted, you know, or for there to be a certain expectation or lack of expectation because of simply the color of my skin, you know what I mean? And so that's a little harder to step away from, because when the curtain goes down, I don't necessarily get to step out of that role.
Yeah.
So what does help is you know, having these sessions where I get to unpack it, you know, with a counselor, psychologist, or with my wife, or with my family and friends, and just keeping it all in perspective. And hope is actually, you know, it's probably the biggest one for me. You know, it's hope is that thing that I'm anchored, I'm tethered to it, because you know, no matter how ugly things are, it's the hope for a better tomorrow. And that's also what helps me stay grounded.
Powerful stuff. I mean, I think what you were saying about the roles, you know, like somebody like, you know, like when you know, play Mr., it's so much easier to step away from him because you're not that man. But Cole House, you know, you step off the stage and you're still a Black man in America dealing with justice, right? Especially when that was happening during, not especially, always, but it was like highlighted when Charlottesville was happening, when you were playing the role. That must have been hard to, that must have been hard to slough off.
It was.
Yeah.
It really was.
And you know, in a lot of ways, I think what an actor does is actually really similar to what a psychologist does, what a clinical psychologist does. You know, we're in service. If it's about me, then I'm not doing my job. It's not about me. You know, and but I have to bring all of my training and experience to that, to be of service, and to be present, to be fully present, and to be playing that tennis game. You're right. And you know, and I think what you do as an actor is, you know, it is a therapeutic service for people. You know, it's catharsis, it's exploration, it's, you know, asking questions, it's you're going through it, so we don't have to, but we get to go on the journey, you know?
Right. Right. I love how you said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I love how you put that, because that's the hope. You
Yeah.
know, that really is the hope. And, you know, so if we are doing our job well, you know, and if everything is packaged, and when I say everything being packaged, not just the actor, but the whole production, everyone on stage is doing their job, then hopefully, you know, we are going through it. So
Mm-hmm.
then that way, you know, we can go through it, so that way the audience doesn't have to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we have a question here. What are your favorite songs to sing to release your stress or emotion?
You know, it kind of depends. It depends on the mood I'm in. I just recently did a Instagram post where I was singing a hymn from gosh, what is the song called? It's called Grace Thy Faithfulness. You know, and it's just that, like, and I was speaking about hope, you know, and that's a song that's about hope. And sometimes I'll find myself just singing that. And because I need something, just to, I need to remind myself, because that is so important to do. You know, it's important for us to remind each other, but it's also important for us to remind ourselves. So that's a song that I'll sing. Sometimes I'll just, you know, go completely just like way like left field and just kind of leave the industry altogether. And, you know, I may sing, you know, something that's like Luther Vandross, you know, because I grew up listening to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and he was such a crooner, you know. So, you know, it can even be that there have actually been times where I've even listened to the Chicken Dance song.
Didn't expect that one. Yeah, just to be silly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the one thing you must love this about being an uncle? Because I know that I love this about being a mom. And these are really my favorite parenting moments. And I saw my daughter on here, so she can attest to this. Is the dance parties, is the dancing with kids, because they don't have self-consciousness, and they help us as grown-ups not have self-consciousness. And so we put on music and we dance, you know, and it helps us to be silly or to just be free. And it is just some of the best moments of, you know, being an adult and having kids in your life. I love that.
It really is. It really is. And I think it's so important, you know, as we do grow up, as we do get older, you know, there is this idea of protecting that inner child, you know, of nurturing it, you know, so that way, yes, we grow into adulthood, coffee. And the responsibilities that come with it, so that way we can be an active, available, adult, responsible adult in society. But then there is this inner child, you know, where it's being able to be silly and to not take things too seriously, and not take ourselves too seriously. So yes, and the kids are a great way, you know, to remind us of that. And my niece, my 9-year-old twin niece, she called me a couple days ago, and I was like, "Hey, what's up, baby? Oh, what's going on?" And she was like, "I'm calling." I was like, "You know what? What are you doing?" I'm over at, you know, Amy's house, and all right, cool. So what's going on? Nothing. I just wanted to call you. You know, I mean, and it's just, you know, just things like that, you know, and it just, yeah, right.
Just the random I love yous too, you know. Sometimes my little one will just say, "Mommy," like it's something urgent. She go, "Mommy." You say, "What, sweetie?" And she go, "I love you." I know. Like she just gets it. They get it. They're free with saying it, you know, and they get, not that, I mean, it's a lot, right? Like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but and it's hard, and you know, and it's challenging in its own ways. But man, those are the moments, and they just bring you right back down to what's important. I'll be running around the kitchen or whatever, like trying to get things ready, and then, you know, "Mommy, what? I love you." Okay, yep, that's what's important. I get it.
Yep, that's all that's important. Yeah.
We were talking before about we touched on Hamilton, and I'd love to hear, you know, someone who's lived inside of that character, in his words. Do you think that the Washington from Hamilton, or any of your research of the person, do you think he has any wisdom for, you know, trying times like these?
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, I I'll start by saying, I'm certainly, not a Washington expert, and so, any thoughts that I have about the man, are filtered through the way I understand him.
Mhm.
But I do think one of the things that, in my readings, about Washington that I find really striking, and I think also what made him such an effective leader was that, at the height of the Revolutionary War, when it really seemed like things were just going bad. I mean, it seemed like it was a losing battle for these guys. He was able to keep his troops inspired. Whenever that man walked out into the field, it was like the general's here, So he was like this beacon of hope, and that's we also see that not only in Ron Chernow's account and in biography of Washington, but also in the book 1776, which is another great read about the Revolutionary War, and so he really just embodied, this sense of hope and duty, to his countrymen and women. And he always kind of had his sights set on not in the now. He kept a foot in the now because you have to be present, but he was also looking beyond, what we could not yet see. And if no one else saw it, he saw it. So I think, in this current situation is we don't know what the new normal is going to be. We have no idea what to expect 6 months from now. We don't know what the theater scene is going to look like. I do know one thing is for certain, we will be back. And I do believe that, the lobbies and the auditoriums will be bustling with people. I do believe that's going to happen. But I think it's about reminding ourselves of that, and so in the midst of all of this uncertainty, it's about focusing and honing in on what is yet to come, and that's the hope thing that I keep kind of coming back to, and so that's one of the things that I think Washington, would really impress upon, our current, American society today, and on top of that, I think also unification. This was a man who saw the brilliance in bringing Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, at the table, knowing that these men would not get along. I mean, it was water and oil, and the sparks, they were flying, but there was such brilliance that came out of it. And so there's a line in the show, and I love this line where he says, "I want to warn against partisan fighting." And so just to expand that, beyond the politics, because I don't want to talk about the politics, but it's just more so about this idea that, we have to come to the table, we have to work together, and I think that's something that he would also really, really push hard for is, this is the time to come together,
Yes.
because our survival depends upon it.
Yeah.
And so that's something else that I think that he would have to say about, our current state of affairs and situation.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, in very similar ways to, the Revolutionary War, we, we live or die by being together in this.
Yeah, we do. I mean,
Yeah,
and quite literally,
quite
quite
literally.
literally.
Mm.
And I think that it's so important, just for us to remind ourselves of that, because it is that serious. It is that important.
Mhm.
We do live or die by this thing.
Yes. He, we went to Mount Vernon. I brought my kids there, and
I'm jealous.
oh my gosh, you'll go there one day, I'm sure.
I hope so. They actually they sell whiskey that I think it was from 1790. Something I have to double check. But anyway, someone gifted me with the original Washington whiskey recipe.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. I haven't
But
opened it yet because it's like this like little shrine,
oh my God, that's so cool. Well, you can feel him there. You can feel his presence, I mean, yeah, but the cool thing too was that, my kids, who, have listened to Hamilton with me,
Mhm.
knew who George Washington was. He was a real person to him because of the music. And so they were like geeked out that they were seeing like his bed, and they were seeing his teeth, and they were seeing his
Yeah.
house, like, that was just that. It's this the way that the history is alive, but then it's also still so relevant, so many of his words, Um, you know, he had he had, like you said, he was so forward thinking too,
Yeah.
with, you know, with all of his flaws as well. He's a
Oh
human,
yeah.
but,
Oh yeah.
but a leader.
Mhm.
And, you know, just kind of having solace in that. I think that looking back at history and connecting with history gives some, to me, I think it gives hope, you know,
Yeah. It
because
does.
we've been through things before and we've gotten to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that gives me hope, you know, and we need that hope. We you know, we need to be able to see kind of past this difficult, scary moment that we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Somebody had asked a question, you know, related to Hamilton and to your work. Like, how long did, just about process, how long it
Yeah.
takes you to memorize your.
Ooh. Let's see. So when we were in rehearsals back in New York, we had 6 weeks to get the show up and running, before we were doing full run throughs. And so, I would say it took me to learn the role from top to bottom, memory the whole bit. It probably took me about 5 weeks.
Wow.
Uh, and there's a lot to learn. You know, that's set aside, you know, the blocking, you know, that we had to learn, but everything, I would say probably about 5 weeks. And maybe I could have done it a little faster, but it's one of those things, you know, what I've discovered about myself is I will, if I'm learning a role, I will do like an intensive study, where I'm just, you know, hitting it, looking at the page, looking up, trying to, say the lines, and then go back at it. And then I need a time where I just step away from it altogether.
Hmm.
So that could be 1 or 2 days, where I just step away and something magical happens. I don't know if it's like the memory, like, you know, fairy unicorns, you know, that visit me in my sleep and like sprinkle dust, you know, on my forehead. But all of a sudden, like things, they stick. And you know, so once again, it depends on the material. But for Washington, it took me about, yeah, I'd say about 5 weeks for me to learn the whole bit.
Yeah, neurologically, so much of our memory actually happens. Our memory transposition happens at night when we're sleeping. So it
Huh.
actually makes sense that the magic fairy dust gets sprinkled on your forehead while you're sleeping, and it just clicks.
Hey,
That's
that's
amazing.
just
You're
super
onto
awesome,
something. Yeah. Um, you also you also were in a production of Next to Normal,
yeah,
which I love that show. If people don't know, it's a musical about a woman who has bipolar mood disorder, her kids, her husband, and treatment. It deals with these things head on and codependence. Um, and and you played the doctor. There's two doctor roles in,
yeah,
yeah, and you played the
yeah.
doctor. Can you talk a little bit about that, about your experience with that show, and you know, kind of your thoughts about what the show's saying about mental health and treatment?
Yeah. First of all, I have to say I love that show. I wasn't too familiar with Next to Normal before, I booked the gig. It was directed by Eric Woodall, who is a fantastic director. And so as I began to familiarize myself with the show, I just fell madly in love with it. The music, the message, all of it's so daggone good. And it's, you know, and it's a no wonder why, you know, the show won a Pulitzer Award, you know, for it. It's brilliant. And but it um gosh, I would say for me, you know, playing the role and being in the show and what it felt like to do it, and my thoughts on treatment, you know,
Sorry,
we had a lot of
I
work.
threw a curveball at you there.
Yeah, no, but this, though, this is such a good question. I would say, if anything, in doing the show, for me, it was like there's so much work to be done. You know, unfortunately, when it comes to mental health, you know, it's this taboo thing here in America, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because you can't make money off of it. Maybe, you know, maybe, you know, there's no capitalism, you know, behind it. And and that's a shame, you know what I mean? And I know that's a very forward thing to say, but I mean, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know. But I do know that when it comes to mental health, you know, it's really unfortunate that it's kind of getting second rate, you know, attention, generally speaking. And this is not a reflection on psychologists who are working, you know, incredibly hard, and who are committed to the work. But when it comes to the treatment of it, you know, it was heart-wrenching to play the role of the doctor, because the first doctor, you know, he's like, let me just, you know, give you some pills, give you some medications, and oh, that's not working. Okay, all right, well, let's run over here. But what he wasn't taking into account was the other side of it, was the emotional. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about the second doctor, is he took a more holistic approach to this thing, and which I think made it all the more gut wrenching for him. You know, at the end of the show, when things didn't quite go as he had hoped. I mean, later on, I mean, she continues her treatment, you know, but it was the ups and downs, you know, of it. And so, I would, if anything, it was a reminder to, I think, I know this sounds really silly and so elementary, but be kind. You know, really be kind to people, because the thing is, if you don't understand it, you know, like, that's okay. But you know, but don't be quick to jump to conclusion like, well, this person's crazy. I will say, since that show, I've really been careful not to not throw around the word bipolar.
Yeah.
Because that is a serious condition.
Yes.
And some people, you know, are living in a state of hell, if you will, because there is no resolution for them. And so that's something that coming out of that show, that I've become very mindful of. I think also, gosh, you had talked about, you said codependency, you know, and the idea of, well, how do you address that issue? You know, how, like, you know, it's like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? And so, oh, I wouldn't mind going back to that show. I really wouldn't mind going back to it, because there are so many layers there, and there's still a lot more to unpack. And I only had like 5 weeks with it.
Oh yeah, I would love to see you play the role of the father, Gabe.
Whew. Oh my gosh, yes, please.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be. I mean, every role has its challenges, but that would certainly be a challenge that I would, you know, really look forward to, because he too is an interesting character. You know, because we see what's happening with Diane, you know, and her bouts, and her state of her mental state. Because I don't want to call it, like, I don't want to say anything that's going to be inappropriate, or that's not, you know, or that's not correct. You know, but she's dealing with it. But you have her husband on the other side, who is trying to keep everything together, but he's not giving her space. You know, he's not supporting her the way that she needs to be supported.
Right.
And I do think, you know, that's a common thing for, you know, amongst a lot of guys. You know, we just want to fix it. You know, it's like, we just want to fix it. And that was something else for me to observe. And it's almost like someone putting a mirror up in front of me. You know, as I was watching them work, you know, in rehearsals, or even watching the show from the sidelines. And it was a mirror, you know, because sometimes, like, for, you know, as a husband, it's like, you know, maybe the way to fix it is just by being present. Don't try to, you know, fix the problem. Sometimes just sit with the person in the problem.
I think I can hear all the women saying amen. Yes. And he tried, you're right, in the show, gave the husband tries to fix it. And, you know, and so in psychology, we talk a lot about this concept of the identified patient, the person who comes in and is, you know, kind of pointed out as like, oh, this person is the one who has the problems, but me, the family member, doesn't have any problems. And there's a comfort, there's a relief in that. Yeah. And, you know, and there's something that has happened in their past that her brain is trying to deal with, and he's totally trying to not deal with. And that's his issue, that in her being sick, he doesn't consciously want it, but subconsciously it allows him to be in denial. It allows him to, because he's focused on her and her mental illness. And I think it's so well, it's so well written. It's
It
just a
is.
piece.
It is. It
Mm-hmm.
really is.
Yeah. Let's see. I wanted to go back to the idea of service. And folks, we have a little bit more time left. So if you want to ask a question to be part of the conversation, please put the question in the stream. But I want to go back to this idea of service. And, you know, your work as an actor being of service, you know, and maybe in other ways as well. And how do you feel that impacts your mental wellness to be of service to other people?
You know, it helps me take the focus and the attention off of my own problems. And there's a caveat in that, because, you know, you cannot not address your problems.
Yeah.
But I've actually discovered, you know, when I'm helping, you know, be it on the stage, off the stage, you know, in my personal private life, whatnot, you know, whenever I'm helping someone, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be like, you know, with their problems. You know, it could even be simple as, you know, I'm gonna go do something, you know, I'm gonna go surprise someone by, you know,
Yeah.
buying them a cup of coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's this idea of being thoughtful. It's about
Mm-hmm.
being very thoughtful and thinking about other people. I really do try to I make it a goal of mine, you know, to always think of others before I think of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason behind it is, for me personally, I get more joy and satisfaction out of that. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, I'm willing to sacrifice myself, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to where I am, you know, I become someone's doormat, or, you know, I'm not, you know, dealing with my own problems, you know, because you know, we all have them, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But I do believe that there is power in service, and it's almost like we're wired in that way.
Yeah.
I really do think that we're wired, you know, to live in community where we are helping each other. And so one of the ways that's just been really helpful for me is I have actually learned more about myself by helping other people than me just, you know, making it all about me and just living in my own space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's therapy, and it's therapy without even realizing that it's therapy.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I do wish that, you know, if I kind of wish there was like a course, like a college course, and even for high schoolers, you know, that they
Yeah.
have to take a class called, you know, I mean, not community service, but why not? Maybe community service, or, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's a topic for the semester
Yeah.
where there's a project where, you know, folks are, you know, they're required to go out and do something, that is kind. Because I just think that there's a value in that, and I think in that what it develops is civility,
Yeah.
and there's a
Yeah.
lack of it in America today.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We're so less connected. I mean, Lord knows that this time is not a time that invented lack of civility or invented, you know, kind of lack of respect.
Yeah.
But there is this increased distancing that adds to it, right? And so, you know, even something like, you know, social media, which can be good or bad,
Hmm.
but it, you know, you really don't think of that person on the other side as your brother or your cousin or your
No.
kid or your spouse or your best friend. You don't think of them, and that's why it's so easy to say things that maybe you feel entitled to say, or not entitled, but you feel, you know, you feel you're in the right to say,
Hmm.
but you know, kindness, like you were saying before, goes such a long way. It's better for the world, and it's better for you individually, because when we anger, all of our emotions have a function, right? So anger's
Yeah.
function is a call to arms,
Yeah.
unless there's no reason to call to arms. If it motivates you to do something, to protect yourself, to change something in your life, to change the way you interact with the world, that's fantastic. If it just sits inside of you, it eats you, and that's
Yeah.
resentment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I think kindness, I'll tell you this, as a parent,
Uh-huh.
it's the number one value that
Hmm.
I teach. And we talk about it a lot. You know, they're 5 and 7, but they get it, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, we'll talk about how important it is to be kind. And, you know, when they go off to school in the morning, you know, I'll write them a little note and say, be kind, you know, today, or something. A lot of times the theme is around kindness. You know, and we'll talk about the most important way to be is to be kind, because how we treat ourselves and other people is kind of the basis of everything, right? We're social creatures.
We are. We really are. When I was working for Walt Disney, I was doing Festival of the Lion King, and we could pump out individually. We could do up to 4 shows a day, and and during the holiday season, or during peak seasons, we could do more. Or and things happen. Someone in the shift after me could call out sick, and they couldn't find someone to step in. So then now I'm doing 8 shows. And it's a 30-minute 30-minute music review of Lion King, but it is high energy, and it's a lot. It really is a lot. And so but what I gained from that experience was this idea of service, and it's not that it was new, because it was something that's always been part of my life, from my upbringing. But as an actor, it really helped me to hone in on exactly what it is that we do and how powerful it is, because it could be a theater filled with Make-A-Wish Foundation family members, and these are families that are there for various reasons, because they're celebrating, their kid's last chemo treatment, or they got bad news and found out the chemo treatment isn't working. What I mean? So it was really cool to be on stage and to be of service to these families, to help them to forget for a moment what it is that they were going through. And so once again, service can take on so many forms. It can be, as an actor, it can be on stage, and that just helping someone forget about the situation. Or it could be a ragtime where, it could be putting that mirror up and saying, hey, look, we can all identify with somebody on this stage, if I mean. So, and it's this cautionary tale. Not much has happened, and history keeps repeating itself. Why haven't we learned this lesson yet? And or it could even be with Washington, playing a role of a guy who enslaved Black people. And how do you reconcile that? And that has been one heck of a journey for me personally. And where I have arrived is forgiveness. And so in that, there's reconciliation, and it doesn't dismiss what he's done, the bad things that he did, because they were bad. It doesn't mean that we forgo accountability, because the shadow of American slavery is still far-reaching today. It looks a little different, but we still see and feel the effects of it, whether or not you are aware of it. It's there. And so how can I be of service? Stepping into the role of Washington, and so it's in these opportunities, in these interviews, where I get to talk about my personal journey, where I can be a presence, for people who were marginalized, who were later demonized, but then also to be, so I can be, yes, a presence, and I can be a voice for them, but also at the same time be able to say, hey, look, that same time Washington did do, some extraordinary things. So, and in honor of my people, of my ancestors, I am standing on a stage as a free Black man, in my skin, celebrating being an American, being a free American, being a 100% American, and not a fraction of a person, and being able to speak my truth and speak it freely. But yet also being able to do so by, standing in the role of a general, of a commander. And I think it's such a beautiful thing, so that's another way I've enjoyed this idea of service, because it's a chance to get people to sit at the table who would otherwise, they wouldn't. And there's a lot more to unpack with that. I mean, we could fill several books, on that issue alone, but it's a starting point. So that's another, way that, being of service, has really been, has helped me in my own healing, as a person.
Yeah. And it makes me think of that idea in Hamilton and the musical about, what is a legacy, and that, finding everybody finding their way to be of service is a way to find your legacy. Right. That's a heavy idea, but what are we here for? right?
Yep.
And what impact do you want to create?
Yeah.
And you got me choked up about this, thinking about like, that you were also being of service to the people who came before you, to the family who came before you and before them, that you're representing them on that stage as a free Black man playing the role of General Washington.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. And again, some of the brilliance of what that show is reclaiming the narrative.
It is. It really does reclaim the narrative, and it's doing it in a way to where it's not doing so with um, like bitterness. And I have to be honest. I mean, that was a fight for me, to
Mm-hmm.
not feel embittered, especially as I was reading more and more about Washington, because history is told through the eyes of the victor, and so that was a whole other thing, because I'm reading about Washington, but I'm also reading about American slavery, and,
Yep.
and reading about some of the slaves that some of the people that he enslaved.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, it's like, okay, there's one narrative over here where it's like, he could do no wrong. And, yes, he had his setbacks and his insecurities, but all this stuff over here was kind of being ignored.
Right.
Uh, and I just think that, if as a nation, as a world, but as a nation, if we are to improve upon ourselves, we really have to, I think, address the elephant in the room. We have to address the ugly past, and and
Our original sin, right? We were
yeah,
founded in original sin.
right. It was, and I think some people are afraid to touch that because it's like, well, if we do that, then that means I'm not patriotic, and it's like, no, actually, to be patriotic is to be like, you know what? Ooh, that was really ugly. Like, that was bad. It was wrong. There's no justifying it. And but you know what? Let's talk about it. Because what is it that happened then that we can learn from? To ensure that that doesn't happen again today. So that way we are building people up, because we are only as strong as the weakest person, as the weakest
Yeah.
person in the room.
Yeah.
And so that has been, I think, once again, one of the things I've most enjoyed, and it's been painful. I mean, my wife, Wanda, she'll tell you, I've had moments where I have just wrestled with it. I'll put a
Yeah.
plug down and I'm just mad, I'm just upset, but then, it's that idea of hope for a better tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm able to pick it up and say, all right, you know what? I have forgiven him. And you know what? Here we go. Because sometimes forgiveness, you have to forgive somebody over and over and over again,
Yep.
but that's part of the process. And, I wonder what might it look like if this nation, uh, for a moment, said, you know what? Let's not only acknowledge it, but let's issue a formal apology for what has happened. And I know that is very um, that is a very compacted and a very complex thing to do. It shouldn't be, but because of the history there, some people will get in their feelings about it, and they're gonna feel like,
Mm.
well, if I apologize, then that means that I had something to do with it. It's like, no, 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 no. It's not about whether or not you personally had something to do with it, but it's a tribute. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tribute, and it's an act of symbolism, and it's not just for African Americans. It's not just for Native Americans. It's for anyone who has ever felt wrong or marginalized. Women, even white women. I mean, and once again, it's not to demonize any one population of people either. It's I'm not looking at it from. I'm not even coming at it from that point of view. But what would it look like if we the people
Yeah.
could let down our guard just for a moment, as Washington would say, can I be real a second, for just a millisecond, let down my guard and tell the people how I feel a second. And if we then said, you know what, that was a really bad thing that happened.
Yeah.
I'm really, I don't understand it. I can't say I understand what it is that you are experiencing in this America we all live in today. I don't know what your unique experiences are, but I'm really sorry that happened. I'm really, really sorry it happened. And as a result, I'm willing to, I'm committing myself, to learn, to try to understand the best I can. And I think I just think that would be just a really fascinating thing that would happen if it came from Congress. And I'm just going to just put it out there in the universe, you know, and just kind of just put that out there. I think if that came from our leaders, you know, I'm curious to see what might happen. What might that look like? How might that affect people?
I mean, you know, you're talking about this concept of amends, which is, you know, an incredibly, incredibly impactful, incredibly powerful tool that we can use as human beings, you know, individually, you know, in our relationships, but, you know, to broaden that concept to be sociological, you know, to make amends, to acknowledge the wrong, right? It's good for the person acknowledging the wrong, and it's good for the person who's being acknowledged. Yeah. And it's kind of insane that as a nation, we have not done that. You know, I think about, you know, that's been done for things like, I believe it's been done for the Japanese internment camps. I believe we've issued an acknowledgement and amends for that. Mm-hmm. I believe we've done that, or that's been done in some kind of form, like for Henrietta Lacks. Yeah. Whose DNA was stolen from her, and used, a Black woman in the 40s and 50s, who was never, you know, her DNA was stolen from her, basically. Yeah, mid-century, yeah. And profited off of. And the emotional power, the generational power, intergenerational power of acknowledging the wrong, even if, you know, we didn't do it, I didn't do it, you know, even if my people weren't here when we did it, it's healing. It's healing for everybody. And it's, what a beautiful idea, what a powerful idea. And how insane is it, actually, really insane, that we haven't done that. Like, we haven't even acknowledged that was wrong. Yeah.
No, not formally. And formally. And that really is insane, you know, because the thing is, you know, not only would it be a sociological experiment, or not experiment, but experience, but even the mental, because the thing is, I mean, you're a psychologist, so you'll be able to articulate this a lot better than I can, you know what I mean? But, you know, it does do something to the mind, because then it becomes about perception, how we perceive people. And if we perceive people a certain way, then our behavior, you know, is dictated by that. You know? So, yeah, exactly. So it is.
How can we fix the problem if we don't acknowledge a problem? We have to acknowledge the problem. We have to all be part of the solution. All of us. Well, and I should say even more so people in the majority, because the burden is already on people who are historically and currently and structurally oppressed and marginalized. We talk so long that we have a minute remaining. Okay. Because it's so easy to talk to you and go deep. Likewise. So I want to thank everybody for joining us and being part of the conversation. I want to thank you, Darnell, for being here. You always, I appreciate you always really come with your whole heart and mind, and I want to thank you for that and being part of the conversation today. So yeah, so if you want to find Darnell, he's at DABENYC, right?
Yeah.
And let's see. And real quick, if you are available, if you folks are available on Friday for Eastern, have Jane Bruce from Jag Little Pill on to continue the conversation. So everybody stay safe and well. And thank you, Darnell.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.